Have you ever felt overlooked? You know, when you were saying something that sounded and was important. You know, like people just don't really take you seriously. I was the same until I realized that it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Because your voice is not just like a random sound that essentially is spat out of your mouth. Your voice can literally and physiologically change the way you think, which changes the way you behave, which changes the way you feel about yourself, which eventually changes the way you speak. Now, if you change the way you speak, you biologically are changing your identity. Now, I'm going to give you an example when I realized this personally. When I was younger and I was going to boarding school, and not even like maybe like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, not even that long ago, I thought I knew a lot, and so I would try to explain all of these things to people, and they just wouldn't listen to me, you know. And this was maybe 2 years ago, 2-3 years ago, when like the rise of Tate obviously was blowing up, and he has a very particular way of speaking. And in my mind, I was like, you know, fuck it, let me just try and speak exactly like him. So I watched a couple of videos, analyzed how he spoke, and then literally I just copied not what he was saying, but how he was saying it. So using hyperboles, obviously exaggerating, almost shouting to a certain point, and using my hands a lot more, and essentially emphasizing every single syllable that I was saying. And I was sitting, I remember this, I was sitting in like a beach club. Basically, there were like 5 friends, they're like standing around. And I was like, fuck it, let me just start rambling about some random bullshit. I don't even remember what I was saying, but all I remember was that it just wasn't important, you know, because I was just literally saying random stuff. But the point was that I was shouting, I was engaging, I was making them laugh, I was moving my hands a lot, I was looking at them directly in the eye at certain cases to obviously make sure that every single person was focused and actually listening. And whilst I was doing this, I noticed in my mind that my identity, or the way I felt about myself, literally changed, because they were genuinely listening to me. Whereas for years, they never did. And now they were starting to do it. And this isn't metaphorical, it's literally biological. Because if you think about it, your personality and the way you feel about yourself is reflected in the way you speak. However, the way you speak can essentially rewire the way you believe about yourself, which essentially means you're changing your identity. Now, this isn't woo-woo, this is fact. And you do this all the time because you judge people based on how they say certain things, not necessarily what they're saying. If someone has a very calm presence, they pause, they stare at you in the eye, you know, they have a very soft cadence and they're not rushed by anything, you're going to feel much more secure with that person, and that person will seem much more confident, much calmer, right? They will have a lot more conviction. That's just one example, right? But if, for example, you're speaking to someone, and obviously I'm going to exaggerate it, but they're rushing through their words, they're taking like unneeded breaks, like they're stuttering, you know, basically what I'm doing right now, you are not going to feel that they are a confident person, right? So by changing the way that you speak, you are literally changing your personality. And at the end of the day, people judge you on how you speak. That's just a fact, right? So the point of this is that if you want to change how people not only perceive you, but also how you perceive yourself, change the way you speak, right? Let's say you want to appear more confident. In your mind, think to yourself, what would make you feel like someone else is confident with the way they're speaking? They're most likely pausing, maintaining eye contact. They have a deeper pitch. They're not speaking from their throat, they're speaking from their diaphragm, right? They choose their words carefully. They don't fill the silence when they're thinking. See my point? And I promise you, it might be a bit woo-woo. Obviously shouldn't say But that is just my experience. So be very careful about the way you speak. Super simple, short, use this information how you want to.